When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the Vehicle Owner's Manual for important feature limitations and information.
Ampire. Hey babies and babies and babies and babies and babies and babies. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Welcome into a Tuesday edition Bram Weinstein show on ESPN 630 The Sports Capital, and of course produced by Ampire Media. If you are listening to the podcast version of this show, this airs live from 11 to 12 p.m. every single day weekdays on ESPN 630. Then the podcast pops up, and every so often on the Ampire Media YouTube page, when Callow is with me and we tape it from my little studio, then we put it up on YouTube. Not today, though. I'm going to be doing this one solo, and I want to focus in on Jayden Daniels and what was happening over the weekend, to the reaction to him changing the play, the big moment from the Jets game where Jayden Daniels was expected to come out, play his first game in an NFL jersey at the Jets. He was going to get one series. They were going to run the ball a couple times. He was going to throw a screen pass. And if they don't get a first down, whatever, glad you got to warm up, get the feel of walking out onto an NFL stadium, get to feel like you're playing a little bit of football. But that's all we're going to do. We're going to walk back to the sideline. You get a first down, great. Keep going on the drive, see what happens from there, and we'll keep going. Daniels had a different idea. On a 3rd and 6, he checked to a different play. Sam Cosby revealed that to us in the broadcast while he joined us live in the second quarter to tell us, he checked out of this play and went to a throw to Bram because he didn't like what he saw. And here's what he had to say about it after the game.
I mean, it's just something that throughout practice, throughout the time I've been here, that Cliff was like, hey, if you don't like this look, check it. So it came out in a certain look, and we were running a play. I didn't like it, so I just checked it.
What was it supposed to be originally?
It was a screen, but everybody's within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, so it was going to pretty much be a dead play. So I just checked it and gave my guy a chance to make a play.
So isn't this what you want your rookie quarterback to do? Yeah, right? Don't you want him to do that? Like to check out of a play like that and try to find a better play and show off what you can do and show your acumen for the offense. Well, this is not exactly what Dan Quinn and company wanted him to do. So I wouldn't call this a controversy. It's just more a little bit like you didn't kind of need to show what you're capable of. And this is what Quinn said about it on Saturday night after it happened.
It's an interesting question, checking into it. I thought of Top Gun. Do I have permission to buzz the tower? No, Ghost Rider, the pattern is full. And so I think on that one, he wanted to ask for forgiveness and not permission, and then throw, an absolute dime, over the top to Diami to go. So it was a really cool play. I think it probably illustrates for him the awareness and checks and things that go into it. So, he did not ask for permission, so he went ahead and buzzed the tower anyway. So it was a really cool play.
And when he completes that pass, he looks to the sideline with this big grin. Part of his makeup is the enjoyment he has playing the game. That's got to rub off on everybody.
It does, and I think you've probably seen he and his teammates interact, during the time here, and so they all have real belief and trust in him as well. So yeah, it is a cool thing to see, and he was smiling back at us. He knew, he went off script, and can I go back in? And the answer was no. So
same thing on the touchdown play. The result ended up good. Were you happy with the process there?
Yeah, that process I was okay with. Yeah, where there's no, full disclosure, where there's no one there, you're allowed to run. Yeah.
So get up to Monday, and the team has a light practice in shells. They're going to turn around, they're going to rinse repeat here, and they're going to go down to Miami, and they're going to go face the Dolphins in a joint practice on Thursday, and then they're going to have their second preseason game on Saturday. We'll see how much Jayden is going to play in that one, or the offensive line. How available are they going to be? Is it going to be a similar thing where the starters get a lot of time in the practice but don't get a lot of time in the game? Like, we'll have to see as the week plays out, and we'll talk to Quinn more about that. But so on Monday, though, they started to revisit this idea of, hey, wasn't that great that Jayden did what he did? And Quinn, again, I don't think he wanted to go out of his way to criticize Daniels for doing it, because he, in the real world of football in the regular season, did the right thing, obviously called into the right play, trusted one of his players to make the play, and threw a dime to him, and Diami, rewarded him by making an incredible catch. Like, you want the quarterback to do this, but in week one of the preseason, where I am not sure that Dan Quinn and company really want the world to know what he's capable of, there was a little bit of, not exactly they're angry that he did what he did, but it certainly was outside of the guardrails they had placed on his performance. So Quinn was asked about it again on Monday and kind of put into context why he wasn't really wanting Daniels to go to that length and do that.
I think we understand why you kind of said what you said, but just what was the order? Is he not allowed to? Did you not want him to audible at that point because for some reason the offensive line questions, or what was it for you that was like, okay, maybe that wasn't the way to go, but I see what he did?
Yeah, well, I think, and we did have some fun with it, but the main thing we wanted to make sure, hey, these are the guidelines we wanted to do based on personnel or checks to go through, so that's why we did it. And I thought he did a really good job, in a small amount of plays, you felt his presence. And everything we're doing with him, I know you guys got a lot of questions about him, is, to set him up for a remarkable career, not just a preseason or a regular season. And so that's why Adam and I were so deliberate and intentional about how we practice him and how we play. And so I know everybody wants to put everything in front, but he's just knocking every step down that he's supposed to. And I think that's an important process. We're not going to miss it. I think I told you that way early on, that was going to be it. So we're setting him up to play remarkable for a long time, not just to see if we can get him more playing time in preseason game one or that. So he's checking all the things that I wanted to. But I think early on we had said, hey, we're going to get these competitive moments, jet one, this one. So we had some to go. So another important week for him to stay in that process.
So I started thinking about this more and more and more. And I'm sitting here going, okay, why wouldn't he be happy that he went and did the right thing? Daniels explained his thinking. He's like, it's 3rd and 6. We've got a screen pass called. There's 7 guys up on the line. There's almost no chance it's going to work. I'm going to check out of it and go to a play and throw one down the field and see what happens. And in the real world and in the regular season, praise him for doing this. But the coaching staff really didn't want to kind of unleash Daniels. Why? So there's a number of reasons that I've been thinking about, over the last 24, 48 hours about this. Why wouldn't they want him to do that? And I don't think they're not mad at him about it. And I don't think this is about a control thing, we want to control him or we want him to listen to us. I didn't actually get any kind of sense like that at all. I do think, and this reminds me of 5 years ago. So the team drafted Terry McLaurin, and McLaurin, was in practice and he was running around, and, he's not a first round pick, so he doesn't come in with a tremendous amount of hype. And in the preseason games, they didn't play him. The Redskins, they didn't play him. And that was strange because when week 1 rolled around, McLaurin is out there as a number 1 receiver. And they played the Eagles, and, if you'll recall, he lit them up. He had 100 and something yards. It was an incredible debut. And I always looked back at that and I went, the Eagles don't know what he is. They have no film on him. They have no idea how they're going to deal with him. Let's just surprise them with him. He's ready to go. Why show what he can do? And that worked. They ended up losing that game. They gave up a big lead and they lost. But McLaurin was kind of it was a total surprise. We've got a big time player here that you didn't know about because wisely, they didn't show him off in the preseason. throughout this process with Jayden Daniels, the team has gone really, really cognizantly through a process of not trying to put too many expectations on him. They're not trying to do very much in terms of like pushing him out there as a face of the team. They didn't make him go to the draft party. They haven't asked him to do a lot publicly on behalf of the team. They haven't asked a lot of him otherwise. Like, they have not gone out of their way to try to thrust anything or accelerate a process, even though we're all super excited, obviously, about his ability and what he can do. As practice has progressed, like when they came out the beginning of camp, Dan Quinn put it this way: there's no secret here, which was basically code for, we are hoping that he is going to be the starting quarterback here on day one, but we're not going to rush that process. And his line was, he'll know when he's ready and we'll know when he's ready. And they've given no particular hint other than to say on the unofficial first depth chart, he's the starter and he got the start against the Jets. So they're kind of tacitly admitting, we think that he's reached this point where we can give him this responsibility and feel pretty good about it, but it's going to be limited. He's just going to go out there and do this limited amount against the Jets. Well, I've been talking about this, like in practice over the last couple of weeks. It's been pretty obvious that like the wow moments, the really cool, part of what he's capable of doing is starting to kind of show up and show itself. He had this one, I've talked about it a few times. It was like a week and a half ago where, again, they're not going full speed. They're not going to hit each other. They're clearly not going to hit him. So we're not full on 11 on 11. Like, he's not running from Micah Parsons. But he kind of slid into pressure. Dorrance Armstrong was up in his face, and off his back foot, he just flicks this 35-yard dime into a streaking McLaurin's arms. And I remember sitting there on the sideline going, if he does that in a game, he's going to the Pro Bowl. And what he did the other day was a sign of he's ahead of the curve. And so, not unlike that McLaurin story, an example that I gave you, I feel like a little bit that some of this for Quinn and Kingsbury and company is, don't show anybody what you're capable of at this point. There's no need for them to have an understanding that you are ahead of the curve. Let Todd Bowles, let Tampa, let the Giants, the week two opponent, think that you are a run-of-the-mill rookie who's still learning how to read the defenses and doesn't know when to check to something or isn't confident enough to go to a play like that. And on that realm and in that way, I kind of get it. Like, I kind of understand it. I kind of get where they're, if that's part of this, that no reason to show your opponents what you're capable of at this point, then I kind of get that that's where they're at with it. But he did what he did. It was exciting. There's still kind of nothing wrong with it, and it was really cool. The other part of this that I think is worth mentioning and bringing up is Dyami Brown, who I had a chance to catch up with after practice yesterday. And I'll play you that interview that it was done initially in a group setting, and then you'll hear me ask a bunch of questions later. But here's someone who was a relatively high draft pick, who's on offensive coordinator number 3, head coach number 2, has a lot of talent, had a big moment game against Tennessee, had those 2 touchdowns. And then from that point forward has kind of very rarely been able to kind of make his mark on the field and has not really done a lot, but I think a lot of it is, will you get the opportunity to do it? Are you going to be given opportunity? And throughout camp, Brown has really stood out, like as one of the players who has really, really kind of thrust himself forward. Because like when we do the numbers, you go McLaurin, just on its face, McLaurin, Dotson, McCaffrey is a 3rd-round pick. They're not cutting him. Olamide Zaccheaus is a clear number 3, number 4 slot receiver for them. Jamison Crowder or Byron Pringle could be a kick or punt returner. That would be 5. Now, if you're watching closely, it's looking like a younger guy could end up stealing something like that, but that's 5. So then now you've got guys like Bryson Tremaine and Mitchell Tinsley who are fighting with Brown just to get on the roster. As we went through like the first couple of weeks, it became clear to me that Brown had separated himself from all of that, where I'd go, I don't think he doesn't make the team. In fact, I'm pretty sure he does. Like, now the question is, how many opportunities is he going to get? Well, that seems to be changing in real time, because after not just this game against the Jets, but like what's been happening in camp, what is becoming more and more and more clear is it looks like McLaurin's the number one, and he's on the outside as the number two. And then Dotson and Zaccheaus will be the players that will be working from the inside passing game. Dotson could move to the outside, but Brown is kind of solidifying himself as a trusted player for Daniels, most importantly, for Kingsbury as well. And, you know, in his own words, as you'll hear here, he's just needed the opportunities.
Obviously, your catch was one of the highlights of the preseason. Just walk me through that catch and how did it feel to get one of those big plays on the opening drive?
Oh, man, it was amazing. You know, the initial play call was a screen, but, you know, hey, you know, my boy, he called an audible and he saw what he liked and, you know, just had to go make a play to get the drive started. And it was a big one.
Walk me through the audible. Just, I know it's probably a check down or whatever. Just walk me through that play as you check out of the screen, goes to a deep ball and you make the big catch.
Oh, man, so I guess he saw a man all across the board, and he just checked the audible, and, you know, that decision was on him. Everything else after that, you know, we just have to play the play that's called.
You know, first taste of preseason action this season, just how'd you guys feel as a team after Saturday against the Jets?
We felt good. It's a lot of things that we can work on, you know, as far as, like, little details that, you know, that we can, you know, get together and do just to make things better. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we saw what we can do, we saw what we have, and, you know, we just learned from it.
You had a fight for the wide receiver spot, I feel like, every single year on this team. How tough is that wide receiver group this year? There's a lot of depth, it feels like. Where do you feel like you are as you're coming to your own here in training camp?
Oh, man, I don't really think it's like fighting for a spot. You know, I think at the end of the day, with all the guys that we have, you know, we're all capable of making plays. And, you know, with the group that we have, we can do that, you know, as one. It's not just he's better than this guy or that. But, you know, at the end of the day, we all want to come out here and compete, and that's the main thing.
Going back to the first half play, how important was it to you that he checked to you, that he trusted you on that play?
Oh, man, for him just to come to me, you know, it's just the work that we put in, you know, during practice, even in the offseason, in order for him to come to me and trust me like that. And me making that play allows him to trust me. You know, it's not just, okay, let's just see if I can trust him. It's he trusts me just to make that play.
Where did that relationship start for you and Jayden? Was it back in the early part of the offseason?
Yeah, I definitely say when he first got drafted, you know, I hit him up and say, yo, anything you need, you know, just let me know, I'm here for you. And, you know, we built that barn. You know, we met up a few times, even in the offseason, you know, just to build that camaraderie, you know, without the players. So that was big for us.
For you in this offense, how does it fit for you? How do you feel like you kind of function in this offense this year?
Man, I think it just allows me to be me, you know, and a lot of us is different in this offense. But, you know, Cliff, he kind of put the pieces together and he finds out who we have and, you know, and put the players together for us.
You're getting a lot of opportunity here this summer, maybe more so than previously. Like, are you at all surprised by that? Are you not surprised by that? Are you happy that you're finally kind of getting this opportunity to show what you can do out there?
I think the opportunity is the opportunity. You know, I've searched for the opportunity multiple times, but at this point it's just, you know, when the opportunity comes, just make the best of it.
Yeah? Are you pleased with where you are?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Nice, yeah.
So if Dyami Brown is rising up, then what happens at the bottom of the receiving core, and how does that shift everything? So McLaurin's your number one. Let's say that Brown has emerged here as your outside number two for now, and Zaccheaus has become a very trusted slot receiver. Where does this put Dotson? I mean, it makes McCaffrey feel like he's going to make the 53, but be in most likely be one of the inactive players every week. That's how it would shake out to me. They're not going to cut a third round pick, but like, is he going to play a lot? As it stands right now, it doesn't seem that way. So Dotson, where does he fit into all of this? Does he become a player who doesn't get a tremendous amount of reps? Is he not in a lot of the series? Like, does he and Zaccheaus kind of flip-flop series with one another? Do they put Dotson on the outside to give Brown a break? Do they move him to the inside? He's probably part of a 4-receiver set. Like, where he fits in all of this, I think, is going to become one of the more, I think, surprising and fascinating storylines of camp. Like when things kind of started, I talked to Dotson at the beginning of camp, and some of the things he talked about were, and this is not that surprising, that he was like, I really need to work on, getting, like really dealing with last year, and how he kind of internalized a lot of, he had a really bad year. I think everybody did in that offense under Eric Bieniemy and Ron Rivera. Everybody had a really bad year, and it was a redo. But I looked at him and I'm like, dude, you're a first round pick. You had 7 touchdowns in your rookie year. Your quarterback was Carson Wentz. Like, come on, man. Like, you clearly are, a primary great, potentially great. Like, what are you worried about? But he had a down year. The whole offense had a down year. I didn't love the way he was utilized, but this is a very new offense. This is an offense that's going to want to stretch the field. They are going to want to profile his ability to make plays down the field. So I thought it would be a perfect fit and a redo, but he's got to wrap his mind around that and want it to be that way. And as of right now, Brown is rising up and demanding more opportunities. And Dotson, I wouldn't say is falling through the cracks or is in any kind of danger of not making the team or anything like that. But is he earning the opportunities that I would have just handed to him? Doesn't feel that way right now. So I got to get more clarification from the coaches, obviously, about where everything is. But the way it stands in the receiver room, De'Ami Brown has done himself a massive service. He's been rising up. And as you heard from him in that interview, he has spent time trying to kind of solidify that relationship with Daniels. You know where your bread is buttered. Like, you have to become one of the primary targets. If you become that, you become invaluable to the team. Has Dotson been able to kind of solidify that relationship? I don't know. And he needs to keep building it, and he needs to keep building it fast. All right, coming up next, I'm going to give you a sample of a new podcast that's coming out with the Commanders called Booth Review that me and London Fletcher, who's my partner in the booth on Sundays, are going to start doing weekly for the Commanders media arm. And we did a special exclusive version of it last week, and I'll play you a portion of it to give you a taste of what's to come when London and I do our weekly podcast on Mondays starting August 26th. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
This episode is brought to you by our good friends at NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. I'm sure by now you've all gotten back into your Sunday routines, but they could be even better. With NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get the most live NFL games all in one place, every game, every Sunday. And you can even watch up to 4 different games at once with multi-view, one of my favorite inventions of this decade. It's exactly what you need to catch all the action. Make your Sundays more magical. And also, YouTube TV is great. I got it this year. It's awesome. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
Welcome back. Bram Watch That Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. So I'm going to be starting up a new podcast with my broadcast partner, London Fletcher, with the Commanders, called Booth Review. We're going to start doing this every Monday after the games, including the final preseason game. So August 26th will be our first full official episode of Booth Review, and I'm really excited to do it because as it happened after the joint practice, we were both up in New York over the weekend. And so the team asked, hey, can we do an exclusive first airing of it and just kind of get a sense to do this Booth Review podcast? And we're like, yeah, let's do it. So I want to give you a preview. This is not the entire conversation that we had, but get ready for Booth Review through the Commanders and all of their content channels. And hopefully they'll be nice enough to lend some of that for this show as well. But here was the exclusive preview of Booth Review with me and London Fletcher. I'm Bram Weinstein, play-by-play voice of the Commanders, with the legendary linebacker London Fletcher, who joins me in the booth. We're up in New York with the team. We just got to go see the joint practice today against the Jets. Unfortunately, the weather was awful. It was pouring the first hour of it, and then it drizzled throughout the rest of it. That led to the Jets not even putting Aaron Rodgers out there, so we didn't get to see Aaron Rodgers against the defense. Let me just get your general takeaway of what kind of stood out to you today.
Yeah, first thing you mentioned, the weather, and with it being a consistent rain throughout the practice, at times pouring rain, I thought ball security was great. All things considered, I didn't see a lot of balls on the ground, a lot of fumbles or drop passes, things like that. Center QB exchange. Those are things that you concern yourself with anytime you have weather issues. So from that standpoint, I thought both teams handled that well.
Just give me your general sense of Jayden Daniels. What did you see today, and what was the first time he's been up against another opponent?
Well, just looking at the way they started out the practice, they started at period off with like a 7-on-7 period, and they were going against a lot of man-to-man coverage against the New York Jets. And Jayden, I thought, was on time and on target with a lot of the passes. He had a beautiful deep ball throw down the sideline to De'Ami Brown, and De'Ami made a one-handed catch. The ball accuracy, the ball placement, where you wanted it to be. I thought him and first pass was to Zach Ertz. Nice pass. Zach has been a great target for Jayden. You can see him being like a quarterback's best friend. Him and his knowledge of this offense is starting to shine and show out. So I was impressed with the way Jayden performed, especially in that let's call it 7-on-7 period where there's no pass rush, things like that, where you're truly just working on your chemistry and your timing with the receivers.
When it got into 11-on-11, at least early from what I saw, and I saw, honestly, they were on separate fields. So I actually saw more of the first-team defense than I did of the first-team offense. But from what I did see from Daniels and from what I kind of heard and gleaned from everyone else who was paying attention, the offense collectively as a whole had a hard time moving the ball here early. Again, that goes back to, I think, the offensive line is shuffling things around. This is all new. And we had an opportunity to talk to Cliff Kingsbury, a few days ago, and he is openly saying, we're not going to show anything that we're doing. And I think that's part of this here. So I wonder how you view that, knowing they don't want to show anybody what they want to be a secret. I don't blame them. No one knows what their formations are going to be. No one knows what kind of offense they're going to run.
You saw, and I don't want to say too much, because I did see a couple things where you can tell, okay, this is something that they're saving for Tampa Bay week 1 that, I saw that we hadn't seen out in Ashburn, especially with the fans being out there. So there were some wrinkles that they did offensively that you could say, okay, I really like this aspect. Now, I don't want to share too much on the podcast. You and I could talk off air. But when you look at it, it's really about just being able to compete against another team, compete and making sure, is he making the right decision? And not just him, but the quarterback in general. Are they making the right decision? Does the pass pro, are they making the right calls? I saw Tyler Biadasz, making the right calls from a protection standpoint. You want to see those guys making sure they're operating in the right manner and doing the things that they need to do. And they know the offensive line is what it is in terms of injuries right now. So I think from that standpoint, they're happy with that aspect.
These practices feel, and most of the players and coaches seem to say it these days, the way the preseason is treated. More important, it's a better learning environment. There's more corrections to be made out of it.
You want to have mistakes happen in practice or corrections happen in practice as opposed to a game. A great coach, Hall of Fame coach that I played for, Dick LeBeau. A lot of times when you're in these practices, especially if you're on defense and you give up a play or something happens, and everybody, all the coaches are in the uproar and things like that. Coach LeBeau was like, man, I'd much rather have those things happen right now and let's get them corrected than happen on Sunday or during a real game. And I'm sure, you're not happy when they happen on the practice field at that moment, but it's an opportunity to coach, correct, and not just correct the guys who, may have had the situation and made a mistake on the field, but you're also coaching their backups and other guys as well. So things that happen, you're happy when you're able to have those mistakes happen and correct them up, coach them up.
And I know that everybody was paying attention to Jayden, obviously, because they wanted to see him first go against an opponent. But we had talked to Kingsbury a couple days earlier, and he had pointed out to us he really actually wanted to focus on the run game. He wanted to see it specifically against, I think, this defensive front, because I wanted to see how they would handle against something like this. I don't know if you got anything out of the practice there, because I know it was important to the team to see how the run game was functioning as they head towards the regular season.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress. The run game. I thought, Austin Eckler, he popped a couple times, and B-Rob showed his toughness. Broke tackles, even though they weren't tackling, but there were some times where the defender may have been there and tried to like thud him up. Knowing B-Rob, he was breaking those tackles. So you like to see the physicality of the running backs and those things like that. Anytime you're working with an offensive line that hasn't had a lot of time together, you're going to have some mishaps that take place.
Yeah. It's interesting with the two of them. I didn't see B-Rob and Eckler. I didn't see a lot of them today, but how they're going to be utilized together is going to be very interesting. How they utilize their formations will be very interesting. And I'm with you on Eckler, actually. I don't know if I saw a ton of it today, and it was wet and it was sloppy outside today, but he looks as quick as he's been in the past. Like we've seen, now that they've started to ramp up to more of a game speed. And I still and I'm going to ask you about this in a minute because I haven't seen game speed yet since the start of camp, and I didn't see it again today. But when it gets up to a certain point, you're starting to see the Eckler, that quick, twitchy cuts that kind of made him what he was with the Chargers. You're seeing that here now, which I think is a good sign for
you
them.
mentioned, wanting to see game speed or not seeing it yet. You can tell that the coaches really emphasize, hey, we don't want to have a bunch of fisticuffs and fights, and we don't want the intensity so high that we're not able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. But there was some physicality that took place at the line of scrimmages and things like that. And I saw guys running to the football. Saw, that's what you want to see definitely on the defensive side of the ball. You mentioned Eckler. There were some times where he's stronger than what he looks. And we've seen videos of him in the weight room. Like he's not a big guy, but he breaks a lot of tackles because he's stronger than what he appears to be. They're going to utilize him and B-Rob in a variety of different ways. Both of them obviously can run the ball out of the backfield, but also being able to catch the ball and being able to do some things in that manner. I'm looking forward to seeing how this offense operates.
Yeah, so am I. The other couple of guys that really just stood out to me through camp and to this point, they went and drafted Luke McCaffrey, but Olamide Zaccheaus has really stood out here as someone who has really emerged, I think, into camp to the point where, forget just making the team, he may have a prominent role. If you were watching closely, and today he was featured in the offense today as well. So I think he's a name to watch here. He's a vet. I'm not surprised. Considering depth at the position group, I'm not surprised that he's an easy add to the 53, but I think he might be a bigger role play. If I'm guessing right now, by the time we get around to the regular season, he's got a bigger role in this team than I think people might have thought when they first brought him in here.
Well, he continues to show up and continues to make plays, and you want that to happen. When he was signed as a free agent back in April, it was kind of the under the radar signing. Only had 10 catches a season ago in Philly, so you're like, okay, it's not that big of a signing. But then you continue to watch the practices, and he's the one who continues to show up, continues to make plays. I'm not the biggest guy, but he makes plays, and he's making the most of his opportunities as well. There was a couple other guys. The tight ends, I thought the tight ends looked really good.
Yeah.
Saw Ben Sinnott make some plays.
Yeah.
I mentioned Zach Ertz making some plays as well. So I thought the tight ends, our other tight end, the big
Turner?
No, not Bates. John Bates.
Yes.
He made some plays as well. And there was this one time he caught a pass, and the defender safety was looking to come up and thud him, and next thing you know, it was like he was a speed bump.
Yeah.
Bates ran him over, man. It was pretty
Bates
pretty
is
nice.
an offensive lineman in a tight end's body. That's what they love about him. And Zaccheaus seems to bring the attitude that they're looking for. This coaching staff is looking for. I want the ball. It's mine.
Yep.
And on defense, they want the guys uber confident, go get the ball, turn it over, play really fast, which is when I'll get into the defense and the practice in a minute, but I want to stay on that thought for a minute with you, which is they keep talking about Dan Quinn, Joe Witt, this is what we're about.
Yeah.
Your friends and family going to watch us. You're going to like what you see. We're going to play with a lot of intensity. We're going to bring it, like those type of things. And the other day, to the point about they haven't shown game speed yet, we haven't seen it yet. We've not seen it yet. And it's not to suggest that, they're not doing it. It's purposefully, they're not going at the speed and intensity that they intend to have at some point, which is going to have to obviously change on Saturday when they play a game.
I'll say this, and I don't know if you're just talking, you may be talking mainly intensity within the trenches.
Yeah.
Like offensive linemen, receivers, cornerbacks, like their game speed, because you have to run full speed routes. You have to run at the cover guys at the game speed. There's no like, all right, we're going to be 80%. You need to run these routes full speed. So along the perimeters, that's full speed, that's game speed. There's not going to be all of a sudden we turn it on once we get into preseason games or the regular season. Finishing plays may not be at the level that they will be at once finishing plays from an offensive line standpoint, depleting somebody, really pancaking somebody in the whether it's in a run block or a perimeter play, screens and things like that. They're not doing those things yet. Not in the practice setting. You just don't want to do those things, but you want to make sure you're in the right position first and foremost. And then once the games really ramp up, you'll see those guys being finished.
Whit the other day in the press conference said, we're living that mantra. This can't be BS.
Yeah.
Like it has to be that. And so I've been waiting to see, because listen, I've been around a long time. I'm covered you as a player, covered player in
that is a long time ago, man.
Teams before you were even in Washington. This is not what training camp was. It's just a different time.
It's a different time. That's just the way it is. And even within that, I think coaches have certain ways that they want to go about getting their teams ready to play. Where you're going to have some coaches, they're going to have full pads every day.
Yeah.
As much as they possibly can. And then you're going to have some coaches who may take an approach where, hey, we're going to be full pads this day, maybe in shorts the next day, back in full pads, things like that.
It felt like back in the day, it was like, let's see who can survive.
There was a survival mentality, and it's
not that.
We just got to embrace it, Bram. The times have changed, man.
It has.
Times have changed.
The Jets, I'm not suggesting they're the only ones doing this. The Jets were holding up too. It wasn't like there was a lot of physical. There were no fights today. There was no reason to have any today. No. It wasn't like anybody was taking any cheap shots. So the message got across on both sides today.
Right. There were a couple shots that were taken where I thought this could lead to a kind of a fisticuff, and it didn't happen, didn't take place. So guys were conscious of the message that was delivered to them from their head coach. I know Coach Quinn obviously let his players know, hey, we don't want those things. And I'm sure Robert Saleh did the same thing with his players. But there were some times where I saw a couple hits, and I was like, I'm waiting on this to be, something to escalate to something a little bit more than that. And it didn't happen.
Up next, I want to review some of the stuff that happened around the NFL in preseason week number 1. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Welcome back. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. And if you're listening to it on the podcast, wherever you get your podcast, a production of Ampire Media. I want you to check out the other great shows that we produce here at Ampire, the John Keim Report. John Keim, of course, of ESPN, and has been coming on this show for a very long time. He's been covering the team, I think, longer than anybody else on the beat. Goes all the way back to the 1990s. Does a great, great job covering the team. And most recently, Ben Standig's show, Last Man Standing, has joined Ampire Media. So we have a great growing vertical of Commanders content, DMV sports content, but really focused in, obviously, this time of year on the Commanders. And so check all of those out wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the podcast of this show, if you will. Callow wasn't on today, but he's on at least a few days a week, and we'll be back to our usual vibe with one another really soon. As soon as we get through training camp, the timing of taping these shows has gotten thrown off by the Commanders' very early practice schedule. They were out there today and probably finishing up right now as you're listening to this one today. All right. I wanted to do a quick review of Hard Knocks, which their first episode came out last week. They're focused on the Chicago Bears this year. Good team to have, with Caleb Williams coming in as the number 1 overall pick, Rome Odunze as a top 10 wide receiver to go along with DJ Moore, who they profiled getting his contract extension, and Keenan Allen, who they acquired from the Chargers. So what a trio they have coming in here. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, along with Caleb Williams, and a revamped defense that seems to be getting better. They're like, not unlike the Commanders here. I mean, they're a major wild card. From a skill position perspective, it's hard not to really love what they're throwing out on the field with Caleb in year 1. Those 3. But, like Washington, kind of hard to know. Where are these teams? Difference, obviously, the major difference between the two who've brought in a new quarterback that are hopefully going to change everything for the organization is that's a carryover staff with Matt Eberflus as the head coach. So he survives getting through a couple of years without making the playoffs to get a first run with Caleb Williams. So they kept his staff intact. But for the Commanders, obviously, it's all new here, and they're starting from scratch with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters and company. As for Caleb Williams, I thought this was like this would be instructive for our discussions about how this team is going to grow Jayden Daniels and, hopefully turn him into the franchise quarterback that everyone hopes he'll end up being, because they're having the same conversations with Caleb Williams and how an organization handles a situation like this, the hype, the hope. And in the case of like the Bears and the Commanders, these are two teams that have not had a lot of luck with great quarterback play through the years. The last Hall of Fame quarterback to play for the Commanders is Sonny Jurgensen back in the 60s and early 70s. And for the Bears, it is arguable that Jay Cutler's been their best quarterback since Sid Luckman. Like, they just have not had a lot of great quarterback play through the years. But Matt Eberflus in episode 1 of Hard Knocks played for Nick Saban when he was the coach at Toledo. So this is pre-Michigan State and pre-LSU and pre-Alabama. And so he invited Saban to visit with the Bears, and they played this one clip, and I thought it was instructive for how we're thinking about quarterback too, because he was talking openly to Matt Eberflus about dealing with a young, high-profile quarterback.
Here's my theory on why NFL quarterbacks fail at such a dramatic rate. To me, expectations are a killer. This kid's got so much media, so much hype, so much expectation on doing well. And he has to develop so quickly to meet the expectations that everybody has for him. It's almost impossible.
Because there is a development phase to this. The first year is rookies, second year, and as the third year, they got it once they're in our system.
And I think that's the biggest thing you got to worry about with your quarterback. Right? Because the expectations are a killer. But yet, to use your word, development is the key for him. Like Peyton Manning threw 28 interceptions when he was a rookie. It's the most in the history of ball.
Manning looks to throw, pipped and intercepted. Put the nail on it.
But it didn't affect him. It's like the scoreboard. Scoreboard don't mean anything until the game's over.
Let's do it.
How's Caleb looking? How's that offense coming together?
Ready, set.
Caleb Williams, how do you think he's going to do?
Human nature is to be average. It's to survive. It's not to win a championship. It's not to be the best you can be. It's none of those things. And we think as coaches that just because the guy's a good athlete, he wants all that.
Yes.
Now, every now and then you get a guy who's got all the right stuff, who's a great leader, who does everything right. I mean, you were that way as a player. But there's not very many guys like that. You got to make them that way.
So that was Nick Saban meeting with his former player, now head coach of the Bears, Matt Eberflus. That was on the first episode of Hard Knocks. And I think going back to what we were talking about earlier in the show today and how Dan Quinn was asked again about this idea that Jayden Daniels really wasn't supposed to change the play on the 3rd and 6 that got all the hype out of the Jets preseason game. The call was to run a screen pass. Jayden checked to a go route with De'Ami Brown. It worked. Obviously, don't you want your rookie quarterback to go and do things like that in the real games? And Quinn didn't recoil to it, but was like, I'm trying to tell you that we're going through a process here. We're not trying to set him up to figure out a way to beat the Jets backups in August. We're trying to figure out a way how to set him up for his career. And he described it as we've been very deliberate in the way that we're going about this. And it goes back to this team has not gone out of its way to kind of thrust him into any kind of real spotlight. They're not forcing all kinds of media attention. They're extremely protective about how many interviews he does. I haven't seen any one-on-ones. They're coming. And in a couple of weeks, there's going to be no way around it. Like, it's going to get exposed. What does he know? What does he not know? How ahead of the curve is he? How not ahead of the curve is he? We're going to find out in real time. Is he really this year's CJ Stroud? I don't know. You don't know. Is he Peyton Manning, who was referenced there in that Hard Knocks episode? Peyton Manning had a horrific rookie season where he threw almost 30 interceptions. Sam Howell last year might end up being a very good quarterback for somebody. He was a much ballyhooed, hyped player going into his senior year in college, and then that slipped off after a rough year in college. We know the story here. He came in here, and he had the second most sacks in the NFL when he got his first real opportunity, started throwing a bunch of interceptions, and now he gets his second chance to kind of fix it and figure it out. And if you go look at his numbers, they weren't bad. You know, like not prolific, but not bad for his first go in the preseason up in Seattle. Like the same thing is kind of happening here with Daniels, obviously on a different level because he's the number 2 overall pick and he won the Heisman Trophy and there's a tremendous amount of hype. And we've been kind of talking like, look, go watch him in camp. When you watch him in camp, you'll see there has been improvement in his game. You're starting to see some of these wow plays. He's kind of looking the part and kind of looking like he's kind of ready to go. And it's hard to hold something like that back. And the team, I'm not suggesting that they're trying to like just keep him from taking off too quickly, but I understand where they're coming from, and I understand where Saban is coming from, where he's saying the expectations, the hype, the media monster, what he used to call the poison that gets into their minds, gets into the locker room, gets to it, the team. You've got to be able to try to control it. But I will say this in closing, I liked what he did. I think it showed ahead of the curve acumen. It showed his ability. It showed his understanding of the offense very early here. And even if it gave a little bit away to Tampa, I think it showed the rest of us that he's on the right track. And however slow or fast it may be, it feels good to see that early. You only get one shot at a first impression. And his first impression may not have been the one that Dan Quinn and company wanted him to make, but it's the one that we all have wanted to see for a very long time. All right, talk to you tomorrow. Bram watch the show. ESPN 630 Sports Capital.